My name is Sarah Padilha, and the project I've undertaken in this MA module is the rephotographing of my late father's home on the Norfolk Broads. This opening YouTube clip shows a drone view of Crabbitts Marsh near Hoverton Broad, where we've had a family home since the early 1980s, after having holidayed on the Broads in the 70s. As an originally man-made environment from medieval peat digging, the Broads developed into a unique ecosystem of some 120 square miles, representing the largest set of inland waterways in the UK. Along these serene reed-lined and sail-filled waterways lie marshlands filled with wildlife and birdlife, which began being developed into a significant tourist destination from the 1930s. Crabbitts Marsh was part of this tourist development, where thatched holiday chalets were built on raised platforms above the underlying marsh. Today, Sedgeway feels like a nod to an era gone by, and almost a timepiece reached along a wood-chip track which regularly floods during periods of heavy rainfall. The area is one of sustainability in its own right, and feels fitting in this module to focus on the place of natural beauty threatened by rising tides and devastating coastal erosion, a place of both beauty and fragility. In 2020, my mother passed away, having suffered with complications from dementia, surviving my father by 7 years. Both of my parents' ashes are buried in the marshy garden as an acknowledgement of happy times shared and a place they both loved. The project is focused on coming to terms with the universal experience of loss, how this changes our identity, and the painful process of grief. The aim is to reconnect the fading threads of my childhood and to provide closure on the last stage of grief, acceptance. Maya Angelou wrote in Letter to My Daughter, "I long, as every human being, to be at home wherever I find myself. This has never felt more true than at this point in my life." As I return to Sedgeway, walking along the track towards the house, you can audibly hear silence, only broken by bird life and rustle of wind in the reeds. In walking into the house, still filled with my father's belongings, books and games we played as children, I feel the absence of my parents, but particularly my father, who worked in the window overlooking the river. The photography influences are many, different for both the external and internal images that I have taken from looking at our family archive. I had hoped, in truth, to repurpose the archive as a projection on the walls, which proved emotionally out of reach, and a process I have not yet been able to undertake. For this reason, I chose to rephotograph the archive from images my father took over the years. In looking at conveying the reflective process of grief, Monet's Water Lilies and Morning Mist work provides me with a view that painterly styled reflections are more in keeping with a sense of absence. Edward Hopper's work influences my take on the observation of loneliness, set back away from the main subject looking in. My visual strategy has been taking the morning and evening light to best deliver this feeling. Marjolaine Riley's work Casamona and William Eggleston's Democratic Forest have both resonated with me in the approach of anything is photographable, the ordinary overlooked items of everyday life. The film clip from Celine Marchbank explains her approach to similarly themed work.
My practice is about looking at everyday life, looking at kind of things that people may have kind of overlooked or things that happen every day in our life. A lot of it is about human presence, but it's not so much about having a person within the frame. It's very much about stories of people. Some of the work I've worked on recently has been very personal and quite exposing to situations that I've been in. But I suppose it's about expressing a feeling and an emotion and kind of exploring that. After that project was finished, this kind of need to understand the situation and to kind of come to terms with it, I suppose, became a project about exploring grief and how you kind of rebuild a life, I suppose, and how you navigate through the grieving process after someone's died.
The backdrop of my reading for this project has focused on literature looking at life lost and grief, specifically written in the period of the house and my parents growing up. Way ahead of the times, following the death of his wife Joy Davidman to cancer, C.S. Lewis wrote A Grief Observed. Not only was he a brilliant writer who chose to document his thoughts on grief, but moreover had the courage to publish them. In looking over and through my family archive, I feel haunted by ongoing grief. There are Kodachrome slides I'm unable to look at, and reels of cinefilm I cannot play. Quoting from Marianne Hirsch's writings in Family Frames, in reference to George Eastman's invention of Kodak, Photography quickly became the family's instrument of self-knowledge and representation, the means by which family memory would be continued and perpetuated, by which the family's story would henceforth be told. She quotes filmmaker Pratibha Palmer saying, "The deeply ideological nature of imagery determines not only how other people think about us, but how we think of ourselves. Perhaps it is this that prevents my ability to take a familial gaze, as since looking operates through projection, and photographs can more easily show us what we wish our family to be, and with loss, what it no longer is." I've looked at various collage options to present an overall view of my work in progress portfolio. David Hockney ingeniously stitches images together to give an overall sense of people and place, moving from a 2D perspective to almost a 3D one, with movement from the disjointed blend of images. I found grouping my images in a similar way a useful exercise to look at the overall balance of tonality, cohesiveness, and mix of compositions. The Broads are a delicate ecosystem, which have been and continue to be thrashed by both tourism and changing climate. They serve as a reminder of the balance between what we hope is nature's resilience and its very clear vulnerability. The changing coastal lines are never more evident than at Winterton, where the erosion has seen metre after metre fall away. The harbour development at Great Yarmouth appears, together with changing levels in rainfall, to be increasing the water levels across the Broads. Just as my memories need preservation, the sustainability of our home, Crabbitts Marsh, is very necessary in an area where conservation is a fundamental way of life. Our home was furnished from family furniture, drapes, fabrics, together with family crockery and cutlery, as were the culture from the children from the Blitz, who passed down everything, as waste was simply not a thing. This place has shaped me, my childhood, my adolescence, and serves as a place of remembrance of an era fading. I have worked in the local community as a documentary photographer for the annual sailing events and support the local community, small businesses and enterprises. It is for this reason that the dissemination of this work should be represented locally as a village hall exhibition. For this exhibition planned for the autumn, the images will be printed on recycled paper using a local company. Supporting local, like-minded businesses not only supports the local economy, but shortens the circle of the supply chain. Sustainability of my photography practice in an environmentally conscious manner is a key focus for me. I solely use digital photography and I discourage clients from printing images wherever possible. For this project itself, I have limited my walking around the small area of Crabbitts Marsh. I stay in Norfolk for the best part of 4 months of the year, and as such, by living in the area, I'm able to minimise my overall carbon footprint. For the project, I've used a combination of my camera kit, all bought as used items, together with iPhone film footage and images. I currently teach iPhone photography to micro business owners as a very accessible photography resource, and I see the longevity of my practice in this way.